Crawley Enterprises and Panera Bread is excited and honored to join the National Veterans Memorial and Museum in celebrating the service and commitment of our nation's veterans. We are so proud to recognize the brave men and women who put their lives on the line day in and day out so that we can be free. Supporting and celebrating veterans and veterans' causes has always been near and dear to our company. As our founder, my grandfather, who I am proud to be the namesake of, Albert Crawley, was a World War II veteran. Like many of you, he put his life on the line for love of this country. At Crawley Enterprises and Panera Bread, we look far and wide for veterans to work in our company because we know they exhibit courage, determination, and strength. We consider it a great privilege to partner with the National Veterans Memorial and Museum because we believe in highlighting and celebrating veterans and their amazing sacrifices for the good of our incredible country. My family and I are proud to live and conduct business in a community like Columbus, Ohio, which houses such an incredible museum that celebrates all veterans from all branches of service, from all eras. And we could not be more humbled to be able to honor these great heroes firsthand.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen, can I get everybody's attention, please? If you can please move to your seats, we'll get started here momentarily. And just as a friendly reminder, if everybody could please silence your cell phones for the ceremony. Thanks, everyone. If I can ask you to please stand for the posting of the national colors by a joint color guard from the Ohio State University ROTC programs, and remain standing for the singing of our national anthem by Master Sergeant Kristen Foley, U.S. Air Force.
Right, left, 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 right, 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 left, 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 right, 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 left. Color guard, hold. Right, face. Post, colors. Ready, seat, ready, cut, freeze, and arms.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave
March. Left, 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 right, 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 left, 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 right, 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 left, 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 right, right, right.
Everybody, please take your seats. Thank you, Master Sergeant Foley. Wonderful job. If I could please welcome up to the stage our chaplain, Chaplain Joseph Branch, Ohio Air National Guard, 178th Air Wing, for our invocation.
May we bow our heads. Dear Father, you who were known by our forefathers as the Lord of hosts, we bring you thanks for those whom we honor today. We thank you, Father, for your power and for the lives of those which have been empowered in the service of our nation, our veterans. For all of the men and women who have given their time, their honor, and even their lives for the sake of freedom for this nation and for the hope of freedom around the world, we offer praise and thanksgiving. Father, so many left families, jobs, peace, and safety to stand on the front lines to make sure that those of us today who have a nation of freedom to call home. It was because of their efforts and your grace that our flag still waves in the breeze as an example of steadfastness and sovereignty. We pray today, Father, that we might live to see a time when there will be no need for others to be called veterans. For that, we pray for peace of our nation and of the world. We ask that you be gracious to all of us, those serving now, wherever they are in the world. And dear Lord, we pray for our speaker today, Colonel Lyles, if you allow him to speak from his heart. We pray your blessings in the lives of all veterans as we now honor them and those who have gone before. May all who have served and who currently serve find peace and strength through your power and faith in you. Allow them to know that we are so grateful to them and to know that their sacrifices have not been in vain. We respect them, Lord. We honor them, and we are so proud of them. We thank you and ask your continued blessing upon them and today's gathering and those that will take place around this nation. In your most holy name we pray. Amen.
Thanks, Chaplain. Great job. Distinguished guests, veterans, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Colonel Retired Bill Butler, Chief of Staff of the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. And on behalf of our President and CEO, Lieutenant General Mike Ferriter, welcome to today's ceremony. Just 2 weeks ago, we celebrated the 3rd anniversary of this museum opening up. And this is going to be our 4th Veterans Day ceremony. Each year they get better and better. This year's ceremony will be just that, better than last, as we build additional programming around one of our 2 Super Bowl weeks, Veterans Day week and Memorial Day week. Our first guest speaker served her country as a member of the United States Navy. She now continues to serve her state and community, first as a state representative and now as Franklin County Commissioner. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome U.S. Navy combat veteran and Franklin County Commissioner, Miss Erica Crawley.
Good morning. I am Franklin County Commissioner Erica Crawley, and I bring greetings on behalf of my colleagues at the Board of Commissioners, Board President Kevin L. Boyce, as well as Commissioner John O'Grady. And it is my absolute pleasure to be here with you today at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum to celebrate Veterans Day. In addition to being a commissioner and having served in the Ohio legislature, I am also a proud veteran of the United States Navy. So this is a especially important holiday for me. It's an important holiday for a lot of other Americans as well. There are more than 20 million living veterans around the country, 800,000 veterans right here in Ohio, and more than 65,000 veterans right here in Franklin County. They and their families know all about the stresses and sacrifices that go along with serving in the armed forces. Here in Franklin County, you can find a great wealth of military and veteran history, from Fort Hays to Camp Chase, and at the county-owned Memorial Hall, where there is a beautiful display honoring local veterans. And of course, right here at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum, which you all probably know is the only museum in the country dedicated to veterans from all eras and all branches of service. Veterans Day is also especially important to me as a Black woman. African Americans have fought in all of our nation's wars, but have not received the recognition they deserve throughout most of our history. In fact, service members of color have been overrepresented in the military for a long time, like the Buffalo Soldiers. The Buffalo Soldiers were 6 all-Black Army regiments founded after the Civil War. You can learn about Captain Charles Young, who is a native of Ohio, who has a memorial right down in Xenia, Ohio, who was a Buffalo soldier and the first superintendent, a Black superintendent of a national park. I would encourage you to learn about their important contributions to this country and to the state of Ohio, and the work they continue to do through local chapters, volunteering in our community. Just this past February, we honored the passing of one of the last Buffalo Soldiers here in Ohio, Mr. John B. Williams. I have sponsored legislation that is currently in the state Senate, House Bill 238, where Representative Paula Hicks-Hudson and I are trying to designate July 28th as Buffalo Soldiers Day right here in Ohio. So we never forget the sacrifices and the contributions that these African-American men made. Women, too, fill a significant portion of our military ranks and have long served beside their male counterparts, but are often not who we picture when we think of veterans. It's remarkable to me that people who have struggled for their share of power and recognition in this country are among the first to step up and sign up for service. And so it is doubly important to me that we recognize them on Veterans Day and acknowledge how much their service matters. You may notice that Veterans Day is not spelled with an apostrophe. And that's because the day doesn't necessarily belong to veterans. Instead, it's a day for everyone to recognize veterans and their service. And unlike most other federal holidays, we don't honor this day on a particular Monday. Instead, we celebrate it on November 11th, the day of the Armistice that ended World War I. This day ties the holiday directly to a time in history when members of the military helped preserve our way of life through their service, something veterans have all done no matter when they served. Now, I enlisted around October 12th of 2000. Many of you may know this day and remember it because it was the day that the USS Cole was bombed in Yemen in the Middle East, where 17 sailors lost their lives. That day renewed the calling that I had to serve this country and to fight to ensure that nothing like that ever happened again. But I was initially curious about military service from my father, who served in the Army and was a Vietnam War veteran, as well as my brother Eric Crawley, who served in the Army for more than 20 years. He served in Desert Storm, Iraq, and Afghanistan. As you can see, I come from a family who believes in service to this country. This experience, my military service, as I served active duty from 2000 to 2003, I served during Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom, and then I also served in the reserves after that. This experience shaped and molded me into the public servant I am today. It gave me lifelong friendships and helped pay for my education. That is why it is critical for us not to just appreciate our current men and women serving, but to share with our youth and their families how the military is a well-respected and viable career path. When President Woodrow Wilson celebrated the first Veterans Day 102 years ago, he spoke of the splendid forgetfulness that soldiers showed for their own personal concerns when they signed up to serve our nation. To me, that's what service is. It is putting aside your own personal wants and needs and goals so that you can work for the greater good of all of us. Even knowing that you may not get much recognition for it because of your race or gender, or because it's easy to take our freedoms for granted, because some people don't realize that freedom isn't free. It comes with sacrifice. This sacrifice matters. To our veterans, your service matters, and you matter. That is why I am so proud of my service, serving in the greatest Navy in the free world, and happy to recognize the service of other veterans with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Crawley. Our next speaker is 35-year Army veteran, combat veteran of Mogadishu, Somalia, as well as 3 additional combat deployments to Iraq. He's also a 2021 inductee into the U.S. Army Ranger Hall of Fame, as well as a 2021 inductee into the Ohio Veterans Hall of Fame. So please welcome our President and CEO, Lieutenant General Mike Ferriter.
Well, thank you, Bill. Thank you, General Lyles, for joining us today, and Commissioner Crawley for joining us today. And I just have to say, it's a great day to be a veteran, and especially great to be right here in the National Veterans Memorial Museum with all of you. Let's start by giving a big round of applause to all the veterans in our country. And we're especially happy to have all of you here in person. Now, we've done some 40 plus, maybe 50 programs during COVID, and we've reached millions and millions. A typical rally point now will draw between 19,000 and 29,000 online views. So we're going coast to coast and north to south, but we measure our success on impacting lives. To the 338th Band from the Ohio National Guard, to Miss Foley for the beautiful rendition of the National Anthem, to the Ohio State University ROTC team there that posted the colors. Let's give them a round of applause and thank you all. And, you know, I've never gone to a Super Bowl, but I've been involved in lots of Super Bowls because this is a Super Bowl week for us here and for you, as is Memorial Day, as Colonel Butler identified. And that means it's all hands on deck, and we freely use any military jargon, term, or acronym that we can. And this is an all hands on deck event, so let's give a big round of applause to the NVMM staff who are all here. Those were really great comments. That was really awesome. So I am Lieutenant General Mike Ferriter, and I served as an Army Ranger and a paratrooper and an infantry officer and a special operator. It's an honor to continue serving by sharing inspiring stories and creating connections, educating our guests, and making sure that our service members know they are not forgotten. In short, we like to say, yes, we are an amazing museum, but we're more than a museum, and we impact lives. As an example, the weekend before last, I was with 60 of my paratroopers and their spouses and kids from the 1985 Charlie Airborne Parachute Company from Wainwright, Alaska. 36 years had intervened since we served together, but what great stories, very few were true, and seeing kids all grown up and hearing how they supported one another is really important. And with us today is First Sergeant Daryl Enfinger. Daryl's First Sergeant, stand up. My First Sergeant from 1985. Give him a round of applause. And some have said, you know, not tall in stature, but what a big leader he was. And his shoulders are broad because he carried me for 16 months on his back so that I could succeed. I then, from that awesome reunion, I then was honored to be able to attend General Powell's memorial service in the National Cathedral. And I attended that not because of who I am, but because of who you are and who we are. And General Powell is going to be a huge loss to our nation and to veterans everywhere and to those of us here personally. He touched our lives. Those events were followed by an opportunity at the request of one of our Rangers from 3rd Ranger Battalion's sister, a fallen Ranger, to help dedicate the Colorado Fallen Heroes Monument in Denver. Again, surrounded by veterans, connecting with each other. And after all the stories of camaraderie, there's 2 things that come to mind. The first, the cost of defending our nation and our freedom is not free. And the second, we can all be thankful that there are people willing to put themselves in harm's way for us every day in preventing another 9/11. You know, one of the most amazing things is that in the military, groups of people from diverse backgrounds and experiences learn how to work together toward a common goal. We can't necessarily control every outcome, but we prepare, we care for our people on our left and right, and we do our best every mission. Right now, in our military community, we have veterans and service members who are experiencing a broad range of emotions, from the frustration and the anger, or to sadness and distress because of the recent abrupt end to the war in Afghanistan and seeing the enemy overtake the nation and the people that many fought so hard. And we just happen to be at a place where also we're hearing from our Vietnam veterans again. And once again, scratching their head and wondering, did my service matter? If you walk downstairs to our traveling exhibition gallery, you'll get to experience the stories from veterans who have served our country during the last 20 years. This exhibition, Depicting the Invisible, is by artist Susan J. Barron from New York City. It shows the faces and scars, both physical and invisible, of veterans who have served and sacrificed this war. It's raw, it's moving, it's emotional to see those 14 brave veterans open up and share their personal stories of coping with PTSD in their own words to continue helping others. And we're honored to have Susan J. Barron here with us today. Susan, please stand. So let's lift up our veterans and make sure they're connected to their communities. And one of the things about the reunions and getting together and going there is this human dimension, this connection. Why do a bunch of paratroopers from Wainwright, 36 years, come together? Well, they come together to honor their friend who died recently, Bobby McKim. They come together to make sure, we've interviewed and written letters of recommendation for their kids to go to college and go to ROTC and to go to West Point. That connection in life is our most vital thing. And we at the NVMM, that's the most important thing we offer, is to help you connect with others. For those of you veterans who hear this, if you can hear me, then I want you to know your service mattered, and your service matters even more today. And being men and women of character who have taken on the values of your service and now have spread them into your neighborhoods and communities, your service there matters as well. You protected America for all these years. From the Afghan and Iraq war, you gave hope to a generation of Afghan, Iraqi men and women and children, and you courageously fought to protect men and women on your left and right. So your service will always matter. And Ronald Reagan famously said, some people spend an entire lifetime wondering if they made a difference in this world. He said the Marines don't have that problem. And I would say that veterans similarly do not have a problem knowing that you made a difference. Often I end remarks with this little story. My brother John was a Hollywood agent. That's right, Hollywood agent, William Morris Agency. And all the handsome young men usually come up and want to meet me so they can meet him and go be a movie star. John and I grew up in the same house to a father who had gone to officer candidate school and then served 26 years and retired as a colonel. John and I had to answer the phone. Colonel Ferriter's quarters, Mikey speaking. This line is unsecure. May I help you? And John was a man of character. He passed away sadly 2 years ago, unexpectedly, and he's with us every day. As much as John and I had in common, we had a few differences. He loved it when I told this part of the story. So one year he got a $300,000 end of year bonus, and we got a 2% pay raise. He used to fly around in Learjets and sip champagne. And I flew around in C-130s. I jumped out of them, and then I sipped from my Camelback. He drove a Ferrari. I have an F1 1949 Ford pickup. He would hang out with actors who acted like they were heroes. And we get to hang out with real heroes every single day. God bless you all. Thank you for joining us today. God bless our veterans, and God bless America.
If I can please have everybody draw your attention to the video screen, we've got taped remarks from our presenting sponsor, the CEO of USAA, Mr. Wayne Peacock, who's joining us from San Antonio, Texas.
Thank you, General Ferriter, and thank you and all veterans for your service to our nation. It is significant, it's valued, and so very important. It is most appropriate that we take this day to give thanks to that service and sacrifice. We're especially proud to sponsor this Veterans Day ceremony at this ideal location. This National Museum, envisioned by Ohioans who include the late Senator, astronaut, and Marine Corps pilot John Glenn, is a magnificent way to tell the wonderful stories of Americans' veterans. USAA was started in 1922 by 25 Army officers who joined together to provide auto insurance for each other when other insurance saw them as too great a risk. Today, 100 years later, we continue that mission of supporting the military and their families. We've grown to 13 million members and more than 36,000 employees who support them. With this history, military traditions, values, and service are part of our DNA. In fact, we believe that every day is Veterans Day at USAA, a reminder of our commitment that our mission is dedicated to serving those who have served. We're also privileged that nearly 20% of our employees are either veterans or military spouses. They include folks like Art Garcia, a 20-year Air Force officer who's a project management lead for IT and has a passion for coaching veterans who are going through military transitions. Mickey Williams, a U.S. Military Academy grad who served 29 years in the Army and earned 2 Bronze Stars and a Purple Heart. Mickey now leads our Enterprise Business Continuation team. And Dr. Liz Lane, a military spouse and caregiver for a Marine veteran. She earned her doctorate while working at USAA. Employees like Art, Mickey, and Liz, and so many others are the reason that we can say we know what it means to serve. I got my USA membership through my late father-in-law, Lieutenant Colonel John Gimbruno, who served as an Army engineer with 2 tours in Vietnam with a 20-year career. He thought of USAA as his association because we were always there for him and his family. I think of it as my association as a member myself. And for our members joining us here, I hope you consider it your association. We're here as the sponsor today because we share your desire to honor the legacy of the courageous men and women who answered and continue to answer the call of duty to our country. Now I'm honored and privileged to introduce our next speaker, retired Air Force General Lester Lyles, a superb leader, a great patriot, and a good friend. General Lyles served 35 years and completed his Air Force career just up the road as commander of Air Force Materiel Command at Wright-Patt. Before then, he was Vice Chief of Staff for the Air Force. He entered the Air Force as an engineer during the exciting years of the Apollo program. And yes, he was, and I would say is, in fact, a rocket scientist. He's worked in a variety of advisory roles, included being a member of the President's Commission on U.S. Space Policy Board. But I know Les best as a longtime member of USA's board of directors and ultimately as our chairman for 7 years. And as a member for more than half a century, he's remained a proud advocate for USAA and Team USAA. He's also been a strong supporter of the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. In fact, he was the one to introduce and bring our two organizations together as partners, so it's fitting for me to introduce him now. It's my pleasure to present General Lester Lyles.
Well, that was quite an introduction. It was very strange to be introduced by somebody virtually. You don't know what to do or to say. I will speak to Wayne a little bit later to thank him for that. That was very, very kind of him. Well, I'm honored to be here and actually humbled to be here this morning to participate in this great ceremony at this tremendous, tremendous venue. Mike, General Ferriter, you and your team, Bill, the whole team has done a fantastic job, not just for this ceremony, but bringing all this together and making it what it is for, not just for veterans, but for our country and for the men and women of the United States, and I dare say internationally for so many other people. It's fantastic. Commissioner Crawley, I was totally impressed by your remarks. They were spot on. They're fantastic. I honor you and your service to the country and the service you're doing now here in the state of Ohio. I'm blown away. Thank you very much. And I did have to say, I was really inspired by the national anthem. Thank you very much. It was a very beautiful rendition, and inspired by the remarks from the chaplain. Now, I have to admit, at the beginning, before he got started, I did ask the chaplain to pray for me, and you notice he included me in there. He didn't hear the second part of my sentence, pray for my golf game. And so, chaplain, we got to do that again here at another opportunity. This is, in all honesty, really, this is my third visit to the museum, and that sounds of a shame, if you will, in some respects, given what's here and everything that's being done at this fantastic memorial and museum. My first time was with, it's about a month or so, I think, Mike, before the museum opened 3 years ago. I came here, was brought here by the CEO of Battelle, Lou Von Thaer, who is now part of your board. I don't know if Lou is here today. He thought he was going to try to be, but Lou Von Thaer. I'm a member, or was a member of the board of directors for Battelle for 12 years, and he knew that I would really appreciate this place, so he brought me by just literally 30 or 60 days or so before the first opening. And I would tell you, I was blown away then, and now that I've had a chance to see what this has transpired to, the vision and the mission, I'm even more so blown away. Mike, you and the team have done a fantastic job. And I would ask everybody there in the audience, if you would, to join me in a hand of applause to General Ferriter, the team, and the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. The second time I came here was actually a board dinner for Battelle. We actually had a dinner, one of our board of directors dinner here, and it again was very stirring. But still, not everything was realized then. As I look at it today, I know there's still more on your plate, and you'll actually hear me mention one of those here in just a second. There's more on your plate, but this is it is really a national heritage. I had a chance to do a couple of interviews this morning. I happen to be a member of the board of directors for Jobs Ohio. I'll mention something about that in just a second, for Jobs Ohio, and had a chance to do an interview with Jobs Ohio earlier before coming over here, and a chance for interview here at the museum. And in all three cases, I mentioned that this is a place everybody needs to come to. I won't call it a bucket list thing because that has sort of dire terminology, if you will. This is a place everybody needs to come to at some point in literally their lives. It's just a fantastic heritage. And as I look around, one visit is not enough. You really, to take in and understand everything this place represents, you need to come here multiple times. So it is really fantastic. I want to keep my remarks relatively short. I want to cover a couple of things. One, some recognitions of a couple of people, special people in the audience. And then I want to talk a little bit about why Veterans Day. What are we doing celebrating Veterans Day, and what does it really mean? And then, as Commissioner Crawley and Mike talked about, I want to hit the theme of Veterans Matter. your service matters, and it matters in so many different respects. And one way I'm going to do that is to highlight, as I heard from Mike earlier today, the light side, if you will, and highlighting the attributes in career, not so much a career, but the attributes of a friend of mine, obviously a friend in the museum, the late General Colin Powell. And I'll talk a little bit about my connection to General Powell. And then a little bit of the dark side is of some of the challenges that veterans have. And I promise, as I told somebody earlier, that dark side will have a little bit of a sunshine at the end. So don't think I'm going to end on a negative tone, if you will. So first, in terms of recognition, I had mentioned Lou Von Thayer. I thought he was going to be here. I know he is very, very busy, but his role has been very significant here at the museum. He is the CEO of Battelle, and as I stated, I served 12 years on the board of Battelle. And I can say this now since Lou isn't here. The only reason I'm not on the board now as an engineer and a scientist, I loved everything about serving on Battelle, but they have an age limit. And when I reached that age, I got voted off the island. And so I'm no longer part of the Battelle board, but it's a great organization. Commissioner Crawley, again, thank you for everything that you do and you've done for your service to the country. I want to also recognize for Jobs Ohio, the chairman of the board for Jobs Ohio, Bob Smith. Bob, you could at least raise your hand. And he has done a fantastic job, is doing a fantastic job as the chairman of the board of Jobs Ohio. And I'm honored to have the opportunity to serve on that board. And probably even more so because the CEO of Jobs Ohio is JP Nassif. And where's JP? I know you're here at Gracious. He's way in the back. I see. He's been very, very busy today. I can't tell you all the things that he's doing, but we're hopeful they're going to be, of all the great things Jobs Ohio does, as the Ohio group heard early this morning, there's some significant things in the future relative to jobs and opportunities here in Ohio. And it's led by JP and his great, great team. And then part of the Jobs Ohio family, if you will, one of the segments, 10 segments of the things they do is the Dayton Development Coalition, led by Jeff Hoagland. And Jeff, are you also in the back? So yeah, he's also in the back. Now, these two guys never are in the back of any room, so there must be something about my speech that they didn't want to hear it to be close to me. But they are fantastic leaders, and I'm glad to have an association with them. Well, as Commissioner Crawley has said, as Mike Ferriter has said, this is a very, very special day. But I'm going to add another dimension. It's a very, very special day and a very, very special time. Now, some of you may have thought it was just purely coincidence that we started this at 11 o'clock. Believe me, there are Veterans Day celebrations all over the world, certainly in our country, that started at that same time. As Commissioner Crawley mentioned, originally for some of you old heads, there are a few not quite that old in the audience, the original name was Armistice Day, and it was to commemorate November 11th, 1919, the end of World War I, at exactly 11 o'clock in the morning. And so that's why not only this day, but this time is very, very significant. Looking back at other historical aspects, a national holiday was established by Congress in 1938. By the way, in 1938, it was also when Irving Berlin wrote, and Kate Smith, the sort of first lady of radio, first sang God Bless America. And many of us sing God Bless America sometimes at least once a week at some sort of activity. The Armistice Day was renamed Veterans Day in 1954 by Congress. Now, this week, in talking about the celebration and my coming here, I was at a board of KBR, a multi-billion-dollar oil and gas and space company that's headquartered in Houston. I'm the chairman of the board of KBR. I was down there till late yesterday afternoon, which is why I didn't get in till 1 o'clock this morning, flying in here. But I was talking to our CEO, who is from Scotland, and I was telling him about this, and he immediately beamed. Most people don't realize that we're not the only country that celebrates this day or around this particular day. Recognizing veterans of World War I and World War II on this or near this particular day are Britain, France, Australia, and Canada. Now, Canada and Britain call it Remembrance Day. As a matter of fact, the Brits always celebrate theirs on a Sunday before our Veterans Day, and so they celebrate theirs last weekend. And they're all done to celebrate the veterans who've given so much in their particular countries not only for their countries, but as it turns out, when you look at those allies, for the world. And what's even more important, and Mike, this is where I think you might add to your job jar here. A lot of people don't realize that this is not the only celebration. Now, we're mentioning about Memorial Day, and most of us think of just Veterans Day and Memorial Day. They each have a significant function. Veterans Day honors those who have served. I put emphasis on have served. Memorial Day honors those who have given the ultimate for their country, ultimate sacrifice. As a matter of fact, some of you know that the international sign or flower for those who've given is the poppy. And so I always wear this red poppy on my lapel for Veterans Day or Memorial Day. But those aren't the only days. And here's where it adds to your job jar, Mike. There's an Armed Forces Day for those who are currently serving. That's on the third Saturday in May for those who are currently serving. There's a Women's Veterans Day. It's the 12th of June every year, and it's the anniversary of the day women were first allowed to serve as permanent members of the United States military. There's even a National Atomic Veterans Day established by President Reagan to honor those who served during the time when we were creating the atomic bomb, and particularly those who either were in or around, not in, but were around Hiroshima or Nagasaki, or were impacted by the activities around those two events. That sort of lost favor, if you will, after President Reagan passed away. But believe it or not, a lot of people don't know that our current president, President Biden, reestablished Atomic Veterans Day. It's the 16th of July of every year. So Mike and Bill, you talked about the Super Bowls, 2 Super Bowls. There are at least 5 or 6 Super Bowls that you could celebrate at this particular place every year. So sorry to add to your job jar. There's something for you to consider anyway. But probably the one stat that I think and really like the most deals not just with the days, it deals with the location. Ohio is recognized as one of the best places in the country for veterans. I think it's near the top, if not the top place for veterans. And so all of you veterans out there, God bless you and thank you for what you have done for our country. And you're certainly in the right place, not just this memorial and museum, but this state for what it means to Ohio. Well, service matters. Mike mentioned that. Commissioner Crawley mentioned that. When you think about it, serving your country in whatever you did, and it didn't have to be in combat, really is significant. It's significant in so many ways. And there's so many sacrifices that you all have made. And when I say you all, I'm including family members too, who are associated with veterans. You've made sacrifices, but you've also brought everywhere you've gone, every person you touch, every person you see, every person who knows about you, you bring leadership, something that veterans do as part of our DNA. I'm always reminded whenever I think about leadership and service, a story of an old Southern minister, happened to be African-American minister in the South, had a large congregation, and everybody envied him in the way that he led his congregation. And one young parishioner came up to him one Sunday and said, Minister, just tell me, how is it that you're such a great leader? And his immediate comment was, to be a great leader, first you have to know how to serve. And to me, that's the epitome of what veterans do. We serve, which automatically means that we are great, great leaders. Wayne Peacock gave you some of the stats associated with USAA. He talked specifically about USAA hiring veterans. Now, I'm going to have to talk to Mike. He mentioned 20%. When I was the chairman of the board, our goal was 30%. So I got to find out what happens to the other 10%. So we'll figure that out somewhere or another. But they've done a lot of great things to support veterans, not the least of which is transition programs. One we call Battlefield to Claims, taking veterans newly who have left the service and making sure we can train them to be claims specialists for the great insurance products we have at USAA. And I was on it every time I went down to USAA, something I had the opportunity, in part because we had a couple of private jets, to do once a month for literally 7 years as a chairman, to go down there and meet with groups like that, like the veterans groups, to thank them for what they did for the country, but also what they did for the for USAA. And they bring great experience. There's one reason why any company would be proud to have a veteran serving in almost any leadership position in that particular company. I want to talk a little bit. I want to talk about service matters. is who I consider the consummate veteran, the ultimate veteran, and that is obviously General Colin Powell. He had a passion for people. He had a passion for doing good and to be good in everything that he does. Mike was there at the memorial service at the National Cathedral last week. I only had a chance because I was busy and traveling to watch it, but I was struck by one thing. Very few of the speakers, whether it's Madeleine Albright, whether it was his son, whether it's other dignitaries, very few of them talked about his war career or talked about what he did in the Army. They talked about the man and what he represented. And to me, the man represents what all of you as veterans represent. And his service really, really did matter. He was a hero to me. And I have my definition of a hero probably doesn't fit some people. People like the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers is no longer a hero in my mind, but that's a different story. But a hero is someone who has given his or her life to some bigger goal than oneself. And that, to me, is really the definition of a veteran. That's what veterans do. Colin Powell was noted for his 13 rules. Somebody did mention that during the presentation at his memorial service last week. I won't talk about all 13, but a couple of them really resonate with me all the time. One is check the small things. Veterans do that. They are taught on the job to make sure that everything's working perfect, and check the small things, not just the big things, to make sure it is. One that I know Mike does, because he's done it several times this morning, just in my presence, and that's share the credit. I don't care who you are, what your station is, what your job title is, whatever it is, you don't exist alone. And things get done because of the people around you. Now, you may motivate them, but sharing the credit is one of Colin Powell's major attributes. Be kind, which is very similar to that. And then one that he says is a force multiplier, and that's being a perpetual optimist. Optimism always is a multiplier and a multiplier effect in anything that you've done. So somebody said this last week. I think it may have been his son or somebody said this last week. None of us can try to emulate Colin Powell's resume. That's almost impossible. He was unique. But all of us can emulate his character, and certainly to choose to be good. Maybe Madeleine Albright said that. I think it was one of the speakers. Now, let me tell you a couple of quick anecdotes of my relationship with Colin Powell. We're both retired 4-stars, but he was Army, I'm Air Force. And he was obviously several years older than me, but he was a friend. When I got pinned on my first 4-star job as a Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force, I did not know that he was going to be there, but he made sure he was in the audience at the Pentagon on the front row to applaud me and to show his support for me. I know exactly when it was. It was 22 years ago, because my granddaughter, who had literally just been born a few days before that, was in her mother's arm, my daughter-in-law, sitting next to Colin Powell. And the picture of them together is really prized by my daughter. My granddaughter just turned 22, so I know it was 22 years ago. Everything he did was with character. And one of the things that really demonstrated that was the program that he and his wife Alma started. It's called America's Promise. It's a program to really support growing kids in any community, but particularly underprivileged communities and underrepresented population. And he tried to make sure that he actively participated with those kids, and he did that. He adopted 1 or 2 schools in the Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia area, and he supported what went on in those schools for the kids. He called me one day and said, "You're from Washington, D.C. I know you're up for this. I want you to adopt one of the schools as part of America's Promise." And I automatically did that, and I enjoyed every aspect of that. But one that was probably the most memorable, that I think was significant and related again to Colin Powell, it was Mcfarland Middle School. I was asked by Mcfarland Middle School to come talk to the kids at the school about studying, about being involved, and about being prideful. This is an inner city school, mostly African Americans in the school, not too far from where I went to college at Howard University. So when I got to school, I was told that the top student in the school, a young lady, a girl, was going to introduce me. And I got there, the principal told me, "I'm sorry, this little girl didn't show up today. She decided not to come in." I always get emotional every time I tell this story. And so the principal introduced me, and which was fine. And then I found out what had happened. A couple of days before, the principal had said, you know, you're going to be introducing a 4-star general to this audience. You need to not only get your words perfect, but you need to wear your best Sunday dress to this event. Excuse me. She didn't have a Sunday dress. And so she decided she was going to be embarrassed. She did not show up for that. But she did come to the ceremony, I found, and she was in the back of the room. Afterwards, I found her. I gave her one of my 4-star coins. I thanked her for everything that she does. I applauded her academics, if you will, and I told her what you wear has nothing to do with who you are. And it was... that was many years ago. I have no idea why I get emotional every time I tell that story. Well, that young lady ended up, she went to the academic high school near that school, which happened to be the academic high school that my 2 young daughters, twin daughters, had gone to. And one of the benefits of having twins, as many of you may know, you have double everything in terms of clothes. And so my daughters donated some of their previous clothing that they had outgrown to this young lady. I know she went to that high school. I know she excelled academically, and I know she went on to college. I've lost track since then. But I like to think that just telling her that she was special, not just because of what she wore, was somewhat helpful. I told Colin Powell that story, and he also cried when he heard it, because it's exactly the kind of thing he's trying to do or tried to do at the schools that he participated in. Now, Colin was also a teacher and a mentor. I'll never forget where he was invited. I actually invited him to be the guest speaker at the Dayton Peace Accords dinner at the Air Force Museum several years ago. And so I was hosting Colin for that event. It was a black tie event at the museum. And when we got there together, the first thing he said was, "Follow me." And I wasn't sure what he meant. And he wanted to show me how to make sure that everybody here feels special. Now, Mike, I know you probably do this. Maybe Bob Smith and JP do this. We go to events, and invariably somebody comes up, and it's Commissioner Crawley, I know you probably experienced this. Somebody comes up and wants to talk to you, and he gets so engrossed in talking to you, you don't get a chance to meet and talk to everybody else. He wanted to show me, and in 30 minutes, and continuously on the walk around the whole museum, he could speak to everybody, shake hands, and make everybody feel good. Now, there was 1,000 people there. He didn't speak to everybody, but anybody that wanted to felt that they were welcomed by Colin Powell, and it wasn't just 1 or 2 individuals. And he wanted to teach that lesson to me as part of mentoring, if you will. He had a humorous side too. Some people know, and by the way, Mike, your F1 Ford probably is more expensive than some Ferraris nowadays, so don't give that up. He was a car guy. I'm a car guy. Some of you who might be car people out there may occasionally watch Jay Leno's Garage on cable TV. You may have seen the segment about 4 years ago where Jay Leno met then Vice President Joe Biden at a Secret Service training facility in the suburbs of D.C. and Maryland. And Joe was reintroduced to his 1967 Corvette. It's the first time he's had a chance to drive it since he had been the vice president. And Jay Leno was doing that, and they were driving as part of the segment. And at one point near the end, all of a sudden out of the woods comes a 2017 gray C7 Corvette, Stingray Corvette. And it pulled out, jumped around that 67 Corvette that Joe Biden was driving, and just accelerated away. And they pulled up into a parking lot. Joe Biden and Jay Leno pulled up beside it, and the person who got out of that 67 Corvette was Colin Powell. He loved Corvettes. His first love, by the way, was Volvos. Anybody who lived in D.C. who knew Colin Powell, whether as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs or when he was the State Department, knew that he fixes his own cars. He fixed his own cars, God bless his soul. He had at one point 7 different old Volvos that he himself worked on. You can't put 7 Volvos in a 2-car garage. So all of his friends at some point had Volvos in their garage that he found out around the city of D.C. area. And there's at least one of his Volvo that's in Jay Leno's garage in Burbank, the big legendary Jay Leno's garage. I've happened to visit there a couple years ago, and Jay Leno showed me Colin Powell's Volvo there as part of the part of his 196 different cars and 150 different motorcycles. But it was because it was Colin Powell that it was there. Now, my last communication with Colin Powell was about earlier this year. He was, by the way, I didn't mention, I also had a gray 2017 C7 Corvette, except mine was a Z06 for any car guy out there. He only had 400 horsepower in his, mine had 650 horsepower. And so he liked to tease me about his was faster, and I told him that was not the case. But he sent me a picture of himself and the then chairman of the the secretary of the Department of Energy, Dan Brule, who's also a car guy. The two of them were at a black tie event, and Colin wanted to take a picture of the two of them and send it to me saying, my car is still faster. So that was the Colin Powell that I knew. The real bottom line was he's a people person. He cared for people, and he wanted to make sure everybody thought that they were special. He was just a fantastic individual in every aspect. He was a consummate veteran. Now, that was the light side. Let me give you very quickly a dark side, if you will, on struggles. This is a young man that I knew growing up in Washington, D.C. He grew up in the inner city in the not too nice neighborhood that I grew up in also. He ended up enlisted into the United States Air Force, served for a small period of time as an enlisted person in the Air Force. He was a mechanic on jet planes stationed at Reese Air Force Base in Lubbock, Texas. But he had a reputation for being a party guy, and unfortunately, he was an alcoholic. And his ethos was not compatible with the United States Air Force. He was well-liked by his personality, so he ended up getting out of the Air Force, being discharged. But it wasn't a dishonorable discharge, it was a general discharge. So he still had his veterans privileges. And as the good Lord works, when he got out, he found himself literally and very quickly become homeless. He lived on the streets. He was homeless. He was still an alcoholic. He couldn't abide by authority. He didn't get along with any bosses, if you will, so he never had a job at all. And literally, he was living on the streets of Washington, D.C. But I like to think something about being a veteran and serving that he learned in that period of time he was in the Air Force. Something about that changed him. And it was almost instantaneously. One day, he woke up, and all of a sudden, he decided to go back to church. All of a sudden, he decided to stop drinking. And his first post-military job. Now, it wasn't anything glamorous. He was a janitor at the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. on the Smithsonian. But he was a great janitor. And again, as the good Lord works things, just as he got his life in order, cancer struck. And he ended up, long story short, ended up losing his esophagus because of esophageal cancer and losing part of his intestine because of that same cancer. And he was what some people call the non-medical term gutless. He existed on intravenous fluids every day, and that was the only way he could survive. But he also was so proud as a veteran, so proud to serve, even as a janitor, that he insisted on every day going into work, and every night the VA hospital in Washington, D.C. allowed him to have a room, hooked him up intravenously, and all night he got fed intravenously. And that's the way that he managed to survive. And there was something about that veteran part of him, that service, that mattered, that made it important to him to go to work. And he influenced people. It's amazing how you can influence people, sort of like the story of that young girl and her dress. One of the individuals he influenced was, at the time, the President of the United States, Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton visited the VA hospital, and he was told by somebody about this young man, this veteran, who had no gut, and the only way he survived was to be there overnight, but every day he got up and went into work to do his job as a janitor. And Bill Clinton met him, shook his hand, thanked him, gave him a coin. He inspired the president, as the president said at the time. Now, human nature being what it is, or the human body being what it is, you can't survive on that situation very long. He ended up, after several months, passing away. But he was so proud to be a veteran. He was so proud of the ethos of a veteran that carried him, allowed him to have a job for the first time, and to serve other people in any way that he could, whether it was a janitor or not. Now, you may wonder how come I know that story very well. That young man's name was Leonard Lyles. He was my younger brother. And he was an example of service and serving and how service matters. So whether you're a four-star general, a chairman of the Joint Chiefs and Secretary of State, or a janitor, all of us as veterans matter. Whether it's with your family, your community, your state, or certainly the country, all of you matter. You've always mattered. You matter even more today in these challenging times we have. So I'm going to end by doing the thing that I always love to do. Some people may have seen me do this during the national anthem. A lot of people don't know that President Bush, George W. Bush, and Congress made a decree that allowed veterans, whether they're in civilian clothes or not, to salute inside, even if they don't have uniform on. So you probably saw me and Mike salute during the national anthem. So I want to end by saluting and thanking all of you for everything that you do. God bless you.
Thank you, General. Thank you, General Lyles. Great words of wisdom and such inspiring stories. If I could ask everybody to please draw your attention, Chaplain Branch is going to join us and give the benediction. And then as soon as his benediction is over, if everybody can stand up for the retrieval of the colors. Chaplain.
Let's bow our heads. Lord, dismiss us with your blessing. Increase the resolve within us to cherish each person, young or old, male or female, to see beauty more eternally, tied to the will and personality, the exterior tied to the flesh and visual. Let the conversations of today continue to impact our thinking in ways which are pleasing in your sight. For in the beginning you created us all and declared that it was good. May we live in harmony with you and one another, never forgetting this day and this purpose. For the glory of your name and the edification of everyone here, everywhere. To you, Lord, be honor and glory now and forever. Amen.
Right, left, 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 right, 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 left. Color guard, hold. Right, face. Order. Colors. Ready, cut. Right, face. Forward, march. Left, 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 right, 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 left, 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 right, 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 left, 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 right.
Please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please join me in a round of applause for the 338th Army Band. U.S. Air Force vocalist, Master Sergeant Kristen Foley. And the Joint Color Guard from Ohio State University, Army, Air Force, and Navy ROTC programs. I'd also like to present or thank our presenting sponsor, USAA, as well as some of the other supporters of the event today, Cavelli Enterprises, Nationwide, Ford, Spectrum, and Rocky Brands. Without their support, ceremonies like this would not be possible. So thank you all very much. And then just one final announcement. So join us at 1 o'clock here in about an hour, as we've got a team from Badger Technologies up from Lexington, Kentucky. They're generously donating an autonomous robot, Deborah, over here. And we've named her after Deborah Sampson, the only woman to earn a full military pension for service in the Continental Army during the American Revolution. So some of the program managers, engineers, and designers will discuss and highlight the robotic capabilities developed by Badger Technologies, and also what they have under development. And just further talking about this connection story that some of the speakers have shared. On August 18th, 1986, my parents dropped me off at Eastern Kentucky University. I tried out for the Ranger Challenge team on the Army ROTC program, made it, and I met a good friend, BJ Santiago. So BJ, if you could just stand up. So BJ is here. So 35 years later, in intervening time in service in our Army, he's also served as an officer in the Army for a couple of years, and then got off and became a very successful businessman. So 35 years later, here we are, and he's the CEO of Badger Technology. So thank you for the generous donation. This concludes the formal portion of the ceremony. Thank you for joining us today, and we've got the 38th band going to play the Armed Forces Medley. Thank you.
As the son of a veteran, I have the deepest appreciation for all who have served or are currently serving our great country. And I'm incredibly proud of the work being done by the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. It's a place of inspiration, remembrance, and learning. It offers a unique experience you can't find anywhere else. Most importantly, it gives a voice to every man and woman who answered the call of service to our country. I recently brought my young granddaughters to visit. Later that night, I heard them telling their dad about the heroes they learned about. The museum made that special moment possible. I encourage you to join me by investing in the museum's important mission as a corporate philanthropic partner and personally as a member. Together, we can celebrate and preserve the legacies of our American heroes.